Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever we are. I'm Kamila Proninska, University of Warsaw. We had to change for a while. I hope the moderating person will still waiting for Jakub Wiek to come up. He's in South America, so perhaps he's experiencing technical problems. So welcome to the seminar, Implications of Russia's Aggression on Ukraine for Energy Market, Energy Security in the NATO states. I have the pleasure to welcome our distinguished guest and panelists. We have here, and I will be presenting you in the order that I would like to ask you to take the floor. So first will be Daniel Nussbaum. Daniel is a mentor, PhD, NATO, STO, SAS 163. We are dealing in the project with the hybrid warfare. And Daniel is a director of Energy Academic Group and Naval Postgraduate School. We have among us David Dorondo, also as assistant professor at Western Carolina University. Welcome. Arnold Dupuy, who is chair of the NATO STO and SAS 163, senior analyst and PhD. He's chief of the program. We have Margarita Asenova, who's a senior fellow at Jamestown Foundation. Welcome. And we're still waiting for Samuel, who let's hope will join us. Samuel Furfari, PhD, European Society for Engineers and Industrialists. And we're having also Dr. Krzysztof Księżopolski, representing Associate Professor at the Warsaw School of Economics. Welcome one more time, and let's we will try to focus our discussion around different topics surrounding, of course, implications of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And first, I would ask you to take up to 5 minutes introduction on regarding the question, the first question. Then we will collect also questions from the chat and we'll hold the discussion. So my first question was to Dr. I'm sorry, first I need to take the order. Yes, Dr. Daniel Nussbaum. And the question is, what are the geostrategic implications of Russia's aggression on Ukraine?
Well, I think this is more than 5 minutes. It's an enormous topic. I think all of us are, as they say, living through history. So let me start with what I always think are Russia's forever goals, historical and current. Number one, they want strategic depth. They want to be able to absorb an invasion and be able to survive it. And it's not just that they're paranoid. Of course they're paranoid, but they have historical data on their side, whether it's the Swedes or the French or the Germans or whoever. They have certainly seen invasions from the West, and they're paranoid about it. So they always want strategic depth, and the problem is they never have enough. When there was a Warsaw Pact, they still didn't have enough, and now they want some of it back, and that's what they're trying to do in Ukraine. And of course, they're getting some of that. If I ask, are they being successful in that forever goal? Yeah, partly. The second thing they always want is respect. I'm not that kind of doctor, but I would say they have an inferiority complex. And they always want to be respected. They always want a seat at the table. They always want to be where the policies are being made, and they prefer to be the policymaker and the person with the gavel. They've lost a certain amount of respect here. I think the world has awakened to the nature of the Russian bear, and so they have not quite achieved that goal. And the third forever Russian goal is a warm water port. So a warm water port, they are playing for keeps in the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov and all that. So they are, I believe, making headway in that one. So those are the three things that Russia always looks at. And if I'm a Russian paranoid person, I look and I say, I am surrounded. They have exactly the same view as the German general staff had in 1914. We are surrounded. If we don't act now, the noose will tighten and strangle us. So I sort of understand what they're doing, and I'm completely opposed to it. Number two, Germany and NATO. The old joke is that NATO was created for three reasons: to keep Russia out, France in, and Germany down. How are we doing? Well, it was sort of weak, and it's getting stronger. Thank you, Russia. So that's sort of helped, right? Germany has just run back in. Now, I'll make a political statement that the previous American administration had exactly this view. They just said it in what we thought were rude and boorish terms, but they said, do not do Nord Stream, pay your dues, etc., etc. All of that was correct, said quite badly, but it is correct. And so Germany is now in, and France is apparently in, and so all of that is really quite good. And the third thing I want to pick up, I have 5 minutes, right, Camilla? Yes. The third thing is I'm going to repeat something that Peter Zeihan says. Zeihan is Z-E-I-H-A-N. He writes the absent superpower. He writes the accidental superpower. He's a good big thinker, Peter Zeihan. And he says, when you pull Russian oil and gas off the market, even for a short time, then you're going to have to be without it for 3 to 5 years, because when you come back on, you have to recertify the pipes, you have to recertify the pumps. The engineers say, no, you can't pump right now. So you pull the Russian stuff off the market, you're gone for 3 to 5 years. When you look at all the other things that are happening, it's not just a temporary halt, it's a longer term halt. And that's going to mean a decoupling of markets. This is something you've seen in the news. Deglobalization, decoupling of markets, less than the optimized global supply chains that we currently have. They're going to be suboptimal. There's not going to be enough energy. By the way, the same is true for food, and he forecasts real famine. So when you start pulling apart this globalized, optimized, just-in-time, wonderful supply chain, you expose all the fragilities, all of the fragile nature of it, and there's going to be hell to pay, and it'll be over a longer time, and there will be a deglobalization that takes place. That means oil at $70 a barrel in the U.S. and $200 a barrel in Asia. Real, more localized markets. So any strategic implications of Russia's aggression on Ukraine? Oh yeah, it's unbelievable. That's the beginning.
Thank you so much. Indeed, there's so many geostrategic challenges for any possible also field of security. So obviously military, political, food, energy security. So we're waiting for discussion. So thank you so much. And now my question goes to David Rondon. And the question is regards Germany. Is Germany ready to face up cutting of Russian supplies, especially of course, natural gas? And if it's not ready, when might it be ready? I would ask you to unmute.
Yes, sorry. First of all, thank you very much for everyone being here. I'm delighted to serve again on this panel with my fellow panelists. everyone on this call, everyone in our seminar knows very well the critical importance of Russian hydrocarbon exports to the German economy. This is a factor which is not new. Indeed, it goes back at least as far as the 1980s. The shortest answer to the question as was put is no. A tremendous argument has erupted in Germany since the 27th of February, when Chancellor Scholz gave his speech in the Bundestag, announcing Germany's reaction to the beginning of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. A key component of that debate has to do precisely with German dependency on Russian hydrocarbon exports, whether coal, oil, and more particularly and most importantly, natural gas. In the last 7 days, this argument among German academics and indeed transatlantic economists as far away from Germany as the University of Notre Dame in the state of Indiana has become very, very heated. One group of economists and political analysts argues that Germany could, in fact, stop natural gas imports immediately, and that while this would be a very large and undeniable blow to the German economy, that it would not be anything which Germany could not handle. They cite various bits of evidence to indicate this in terms of supplying other gas from other countries, Germany's debt to GDP ratio, being able to absorb it, and so on. The other group of economists and analysts in Germany says, no, this is not possible. It must not be done abruptly, it must be done over time. And this was the essence of Chancellor Scholz's speech on the 27th of February. He made similar remarks as recently as last Wednesday in a speech to the German Bundestag, and indeed yesterday on a nationally broadcast and very widely watched television program on a Bild in Germany, where he said essentially again the same thing. Therefore, I think the short-term German response will be a graduated weaning off of Russian hydrocarbons, coal first and foremost, followed by oil and natural gas. Part of that response, of course, would be to build 2 new LNG terminals, of which Germany has none. But that will be a 2 to 3 year project at best. So therefore, I think the immediate answer to the question is no. But it is a question which has reinvigorated the German political and economic debate. And at this moment, at least, seems to indicate that Germany will move away from the unreasonable dependency which Germany has had vis-a-vis Russian hydrocarbons, certainly for the last 10 or 15 years.
Thank you so much. Let me just add that this is really something unprecedented when we hear this debate in, of course, Germany. When whole the energy strategy was based for the years to come on gas being transitional fuel and whose gas, Russian gas, obviously. So this is really worth observing, and thank you so much for this. I do believe that we will have many more questions to ask in Germany later. And now I would like to ask Arnold about hybrid warfare, because obviously our discussions about possibility of Russia, the use of the different hybrid warfare against European Union countries has been ongoing, and now the question regards, of course, war in Ukraine. So what we might expect and what is the European Union readiness, in fact, to the possibility of Russia to use hybrid warfare against us. The floor is yours. The screen is yours. Sorry.
Thanks, Camilla, and again, thanks to Christoph and our Polish host for giving us this opportunity to speak on a extremely important topic. So, yeah, again, the discussion of hybrid warfare, we see this as within the context of the broader conventional warfare that we're seeing currently in Ukraine. We understand that hybrid warfare, being asymmetric warfare, heavily involving cyber, but also malign influence, needs to be factored into the broader conventional mix. So how you would address conventional conflict, you need to factor in the hybrid aspects of this. Certainly nowadays, when you have very strong cyber elements that are involved in conventional warfare. And then the other important thing is, how does this impact energy security, energy availability, not just at the governmental level, but also on operational military operations. So there's a lot of cross-cutting considerations to look into. And I'm glad, Camilla, you mentioned earlier the NATO project that many of us on the panel are working on, SAS-163. SAS-163, just a quick background, is a SAS standing for Systems Analysis and Studies. It's a function from the NATO Science and Technology Organization. It allows us to go and analyze hybrid warfare and energy security in that dynamic. So what we've done within our team is really addressed some of these key aspects of this, and recognizing that some of the main objectives of SAS-163 and the hybrid warfare component is, first of all, to raise awareness of this threat to higher levels for leadership in the alliance. Also look at the impact on the civilian and military energy infrastructures, keeping in mind that military is almost fully dependent upon the civilian infrastructure. Again, there's no such thing really as a pure NATO energy infrastructure. Quite a bit, the fuels are quite often shared, and energy is shared with civilian and military use. And then also the third objective of SAS-163 is to look at courses of action. What are some of the mitigations that we can identify? So going to the next step is we're closing in on the end of SAS-163. We've identified a handful of key findings and also a handful of what we consider to be mitigation issues. And I just want to run through, again, at a very high level, because we only have a short period of time, but I just want to address some of these key topics for the audience and hopefully generate further discussion going into the future. So the first, again, these are, and the maybe not, it's not surprising, is many of these findings are common sense, well-known things, issues that we've had to address for many years, and luckily Dan and David have provided a good foundation for me to really delve into some of these areas. So we've identified 5, again, high-level preliminary findings, and these are not earth-shattering. The first one is European energy insecurity, and that is not going away anytime soon. And this needs to be seriously addressed. The second finding is the cyber threat to the energy infrastructure among NATO and EU member states. And I use NATO and EU almost interchangeably. I realize, of course, there are differences, but I think many of the EU members and NATO members are the same. But we also have Partnership for Peace members. But there's a clear cyber vulnerability through the energy structure throughout the alliance and our allies and our partners. And again, we've already experienced this. Of course, Ukraine has been, over many years, unfortunately a test bed for Russian cyber warfare. We're seeing it also in Georgia, seeing it in the Baltic states, and also in Romania. So this is a real-time function. The third finding is, again, getting heavily into the military aspect, is there are serious capability gaps within the alliance, particularly when it comes to operational energy. When I say operational energy, I mean the energy that armed forces need to conduct their mission. Again, we're talking fuels, diesel, jet fuels, but we're also talking power, battlefield power. More and more, we need energy on the battlefield to run our networks, to run our systems. There is a serious inability on the battlefield level to maintain this, and that's something that needs to be seriously addressed from a purely military operational standpoint. The fourth finding is energy supply chains, and the vulnerabilities to energy supply chains. And again, we're talking between the maritime choke points in the Persian Gulf and the Suez, and so very, very relevant choke points, to pipelines, the ability to interdict, to halt or damage the supply chain or circumvent it. And then the last one, the fifth finding, and again, this is quite often overlooked, but we really need to be vigilant, is malign influence. Malign influence being a significant part of hybrid warfare, ranging from very, very simple propaganda to more sophisticated information warfare. These are things that really need to be addressed. Malign influence can also take the form of ownership of assets. You have foreign ownership of certain assets. You have very opaque or very difficult looking into these companies and seeing who owns them or who controls them. Another very important part to consider. Again, so those are the five main findings. Again, real quickly: the energy and security, looking at the cyber threat, the military operational vulnerabilities, the supply chain, and then the malign influence. So those are the five, again, very broadly speaking, findings that we found. Now, let me just very quickly, in the last few minutes I have, go through some of the solutions, using the same hierarchy of findings. The first one, we're looking at the energy, the overall energy and security within the alliance member states. The idea is, of course, to diversify energy sources, and that's of course a very simple thing. People have been talking about this for years, but I think we need to be really serious about this at this point, because we see the ramifications of essentially funding our adversary. We need to look at all energy sources, to include nuclear, to include hydraulic fracturing, and other sources that allow us to diversify and move away from the Russian source of fossil fuels. The second solution, we're talking about cyber vulnerabilities. We need to focus on advanced warning technologies. Again, very broadly speaking, there are technologies out there. There's artificial intelligence, advanced information assessment analysis. The third one, the solution, looking at the capabilities gap. Again, very expensive. We need to look at acquisition of new technologies, new weapon systems. Heavy emphasis on joint, across all the domains, but also across training across the alliance, collaborative training with our alliance and partners, and also collaborative research and development. Supply chain, looking at the solution for the supply chain. Again, very difficult, because it's very expensive, but the idea would be to harden supply chain where it's feasible. Of course, you can't harden every aspect of the supply chain. You can harden where it's most critical, but also look at redundancies, looking at alternate supply chains, looking at alternate routes, and looking at these very seriously, because you cannot rely on any single source of a product. And the last one, how do you counter malign influence? Again, ranging from greater due diligence on acquisitions of companies and so on. Who's actually buying these companies? Do we know who they are? And also a enhanced what we call strategic communications. The ability to respond to a statement from a source, but be able to respond immediately with a counter narrative, and changing, being able to sort of a rapid response, disinformation rapid response force, so to speak. We've seen this through years through the Voice of America and Radio Free Europe. I think we also need to investigate other sources that are able to respond very quickly to information sources, and then give a alternative NATO or European response in return. So let me stop here. I think I went over my time, but I don't want to get any further. But I realize that those are very broadly speaking, very broad topics and solutions. But I think we need to delve into them further and discuss them more deeply. So thank you.
Exactly. Thank you so much for defining these 5 huge areas and giving us also thoughts about the solutions, potential solutions. I hope that we will discuss also this later. And now perhaps let's focus on oil and gas market, what is happening, and my question will go to Margarita, and it regards precisely US policy, what we might expect from the US oil and gas domestic and perhaps export policy in these changing conditions. On one hand, increasing prices, on the other hand, of course, war itself and our growing needs, Europe's growing needs for what America can provide us with. So,
thank you for having me here today. This is a very important question. What is the price of war that everybody is paying in Europe and around the world in terms of energy prices? At the same time, we have to realize that that price is inevitable. Sooner or later, it has to be paid, and it's very important that the West sticks to its guns and deals with the pain and deals with the challenges of energy supplies, but not compromise with Russia, because that could cause in the future another war, another country being attacked, on another extortion through energy being conducted. So that said, I think for the first time we're witnessing the West being united on the need to diversify energy supplies away from Russia, and a lot of commitment coming from the United States as well to help Europe supply with supplies of additional quantities of gas and potentially oil. This is extremely important. Until a month ago, just before the war began, it was very difficult to convince most people in Germany how serious this is. Now the public opinion has changed, not only the opinion of the leadership of Germany, that Russian gas is bad for Germany. They have to find other ways of supplies. It is not going to be easy. It might be a price paid on a green energy front. We may have to return to, as the International Energy Agency is suggesting, it is possible to return to coal to some extent, which is going to be very bad for the environment. But the development of new sources of energy has to be sped up as soon as possible, not only alternative energy such as renewable energy sources, but also new sources of gas. And I'll give 2 examples here. First, the United States promised to deliver additional 15 BCM of gas by the end of this year to the European continent, in addition to the over 22 BCM that it is already supplying to Europe. That's about 37 BCM. We already have the Southern Gas Corridor delivering 10 BCM, expecting in the next 4 to 5 years to double to 20 or 25 BCM of new gas to Europe. This is a small a small part of supplies to replace Russian gas. But let me say something. We already saw this year in 2021 that Russia did not deliver as much gas as in the past to European continent. It delivered 155 BCM to the European Union, and together with Turkey, 182. It was increased deliveries in general to Turkey, but decreased to Europe. So the total number is lower than the previous years when we saw about 200 BCM of Russian gas to Europe. We have some substitution with LNG, not only from the United States, but also from other producers in the world, and we need to increase those. And what we can expect is the East Mediterranean gas coming to Europe, making all the conditions for it to be extracted and to be channeled to the European continent, and trying to find a way to bring Turkmen gas also to the European continent. This might not be as difficult as it used to be in the past, because one thing this war showed us is Russia is not as mighty as we thought. Its military forces did not perform at the way most military experts, Russian military experts, expected. Russia is going to be a lot weaker after this war. The sanctions are going to weaken its economy. It may provide an opportunity for opening of channeling of Turkmen gas or gas from Central Asia in general to the European continent as well. That said, to complement Arni's talk about subversion, we can expect subversion in terms of literal blowing up of pipelines, sabotaging deliveries from new sources, and measures that are desperate, but Russia is going to be lashing out at the West, particularly in terms of new energy supplies and new energy sources that are going to substitute Russian gas. I personally do not see how Nord Stream 2 is ever going to work. I think this pipeline is dead and it's going to stay dead. But I'm afraid that the West is going to start trying to do, some countries in the West may start trying to do business as usual with Russia as soon as the war is over. A peace in Ukraine would not mean that we can erase the war crimes, the crimes against humanity, the killed civilians, the destruction of civilian objects such as infrastructure, such as hospitals and schools. This should not be a reason to lift the sanctions against Russia. Until the last soldier from Ukraine has left Ukrainian territory, we cannot even think about lifting sanctions, because lifting sanctions would mean to allow Russia to rebuild its military and prepare for a new offensive. At this point, where we have to make a very difficult decision, weaken Russia both economically and militarily, replace Russian gas supplies as much as possible, especially oil that is feeding the war machine of the Russian Federation, and find other ways for our energy supplies. It is going to be painful, and the American leadership is warning about this pain, but the pain of war, the pain of instability, the pain of insecurity is much, much more unbearable, not just for one nation, but for the entire world. Thank you.
Thank you, Margarita. I could not agree more with what you said, how you described this huge problem, and obviously today I believe that people in Europe know that it is not anymore only a matter of energy security, but it's simply a matter of security, of bringing back peace in the long run. So, and definitely Europe, right now, European Union, we are financing this horrible war. And welcome, Dr. Samuel Fufari, you joined us, so it's great to have you with us. And my question will correspond with the previous one. So I was also to ask you about how can Europe, and how can the world manage without oil and gas from Russia? So what are the options for us, and how maybe painful this would be, and how feasible this also would be? So the screen is yours, please. And just please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Camilla. Thank you for the invitation, and also thank you to Michael to have helped me to connect. I am in Spain on holiday, so maybe it's explaining why I was a little bit late. First of all, I would like to say that the title of our seminar, what is the implication for the NATO state? I think that we should make a huge difference between Canada, USA, and the EU state. We are not on the same boat, not at all. That's the issue. And I think that a lot of people in Europe are saying, well, it's nice to be together on the NATO, but we are not on the same boat on energy. USA, Canada have plenty of energy and exporting it. In the EU, we are lacking energy. So it's important to take that into account, that what we should do from Brussels, Strasbourg, is not the same of what we can discuss in Washington. If we do not have energy in Europe, we collapse. You have the energy in the USA and Canada. So it's important to keep that in mind. We are not on the same boat. That's not true. Not true at all. Second thing that we should say is that we need time in energy policy. It's so easy to think that we can change overnight a lot of things. This is for sure impossible in energy policy. Energy is not bits, it's molecule. Energy is a substance. It's not just like a Wi-Fi connection. So we need infrastructure. The problem of energy today is the lack of infrastructure. I think that we should remove from our brain the vision of the 70s about the lack of energy. That's not true. We do not lack energy. Energy is very abundant, particularly in Europe, around Europe. Around the EU, starting from Norway, going to Russia, and then to the Caspian Sea, and then to Israel, Egypt, Libya, Morocco, and on the west side, USA and Canada, no problem of resources, including the Middle East, of course. But the problem is the infrastructure. And I have to say, sadly, that in the European Union, we have forgot that. We have been able, during the 51st years of the EU development, to build up security of supply, which was making just common sense. And then since 2005, Mrs. Merkel started to say that we should abandon all our security of supply and just believe in the energy transition, i.e. renewable energy. This is a crime. This is a crime. Because you cannot build a future on intermittent, expensive, variable, renewable energy. The rest of the world have not followed us. The rest of the world have continued to rely on fossil fuel. And the EU has banned completely. Maybe you are not aware, but I was for 36 years an official of the Commission. And in 2014, I published a book defending the vision of fossil fuel. People inside the Commission start to stop to shake hand with me because I was saying that we need fossil fuel. You cannot imagine how fossil fuel are seen in Brussels. It's just the devil. And now you see the situation. We need fossil fuel, of course. And the country that more was opposed to fossil fuel badly need today fossil fuel. Germany. I do not agree with the fact that gas is a problem. Russian gas is a problem, not gas. To depend too much of Russian gas is a problem, not to buy gas to Russia. And here I would like to make some difference with what I have been heard until now. I do not think that we will abandon Russian gas or Russian energy in the EU for various reasons. First of all, because Mr. Putin will not be there for life. One day he will disappear. And we might hope that another policy will be possible. Second thing, the reserves of Russia are so huge and on the border that one day we will continue to rely on this energy. Why? Because it's so cheap. If market rule apply, one day we will trust in energy from Russia because it's so cheap. It's much more cheap than any other type of energy. Russian gas production is very low, and therefore it's possible that one day we will continue to buy on Russian gas. But of course, we need to diversify, and this is the big mistake of Germany. Germany has refused to buy LNG. You imagine the first economy in Europe have not one single LNG terminal. Isn't it ridiculous? Mm-hmm. It's just stupid. So Germany has to learn that they will need to rely on fossil fuel, and not only from Russia, but also from other countries. So I'm sure that there will be a big change with the energy policy in the EU. It cannot be that we will continue to just rely on renewable. It is ridiculous to say that. So I hope that the EU will start to come back, not to a new policy, to come back to the policy that we had before 2005. Before 2005, we had a policy for diversification of energy resources. That means okay for coal, okay for gas, okay for oil, okay for nuclear, okay for renewable. And then in 2005, everything stopped, just say renewable. Big mistake. Second big mistake, to rely too much on Russian gas or Russian energy. That's incredible. How is it possible to depend so much of Russian gas? It's really kindergarten geopolitics. And the third thing is to diversify the route of supply. And I think that one day the Nord Stream 2 will be open. Billions have been invested in Nord Stream. Why should we not open this pipeline one day if the regime in Russia is different? Because I think that we have to explain people that we will not abandon fossil fuel. And this is my last point. We need to tell people it's impossible before very long to do without fossil fuel. And because Russia is so rich in fossil fuel, one day we will continue to buy gas and energy in fossil in Russia, but not only in Russia. We need to diversify everywhere, and maybe also to Ukraine, because Ukraine have a lot of shale oil and shale gas also. You know that we have been unable to produce shale oil or shale gas in the EU because of the Green, which have been able to stop everything, probably with the money of Gazprom. How is it possible that now we would like to buy US shale gas when we say that it's bad for environment in Europe? So you see that there's so many contradictions in the EU, just because we have always say that we stop with that, we just rely on renewable energy. I think that we are here at a very good moment to reshape the EU policy. I am very optimistic. I am very optimistic because I think that people have understood that, well, speaking is nice, but having energy is better. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just one immediate comment, because you made distinction at the beginning between NATO and the European countries. Obviously, we are on a very different starting point with regard to who is who on the energy market, in the energy supply chain. That's absolutely obvious. However, within the EU, within the same EU, we have, countries for whom decreasing significantly or even cutting off Russian supplies won't be that difficult and will simply take much less time than for others. Okay, so there are the differences, and some countries perhaps disregarded this over-dependency issue, while the others, Poland including, treated it very seriously from the very beginning and made a huge progress in getting more and more options in situation just like this, which we are facing. And the other comment, talking today about buying Russian oil and Russian gas, but not Putin's Russia's gas and oil. For now, it's the science fiction scenario. So for now, we are dealing with Putin's Russia. So Russia, which of course destroyed peace and security in Europe and destroyed international order. So right now we are obviously dealing with this Russia, and we are thinking about what to do, how to decrease, also constrain military capabilities of Russia. And we all know that without cutting off oil and gas, this doesn't make much sense. I mean, all our efforts. This is the strongest, the most powerful measure that we are having in our hands. Because I turned to be moderator and not a panelist, my part is to tell you was to indeed discuss a bit this issue. Should we or should we not? Should we or should we not stop importing oil and gas from Russia? And for me, the answer is, of course we should. Of course we should. This is the moral obligation. This is what we should do. This is how we should punish the aggressor. Simply, and we're punishing the aggressor by the use of the most severe sanctions possible. And this is the one. However, of course, what we are discussing here is, on the one hand, this is a matter of political will. And as I said, a matter of our simply moral obligation. Here in Europe, where we, this destruction caused by the Second World War, human suffering, is simply still so alive and have been always alive. So this is it. And the other question regards exactly what you all been also discussing, that is our options. So what do we really have? How can we? Who can? Who cannot? So the matter of infrastructure, obviously, which you mentioned, the logistic of the whole energy market. This is so true. Let's leave it for a further discussion. And now my question goes to Krzysztof. And what are your thoughts about our region? I mean, Central Eastern Europe, NATO members. Readiness to face up Russian aggression on Ukraine, and how ready we are to stop buying Russia's resources, energy resources. So, Krzysztof, the screen is yours, please.
Thank you very much for your question. I think that our region is ready to face this problem. I think that we have general common perspective on Russia. Maybe because Hungary is in this context, this is exception. So the common perspective is that Russia is not trustworthy exporter of oil and gas. And Russia is using hydrocarbons as a weapon for economic destabilization and political destabilization. Additional, in our region, we have problem with imperial ambitions. So I think that the statement, Kamila, that nowadays we have Russia with imperial ambitions. This is Putin's Russia. But after Putin's, we also could have Russia with imperial ambitions. So this is the problem. And maybe last part. There is lots of new threats in recent years which emerged. For example, cybersecurity, disinformation, economic and political penetration by Russian spies. And the last point must be underlined because communists created an extraordinary opportunity to establish well-organized network, especially in the energy, regulatory institutions, and universities. And this problem of disinformation, based on this Russian penetration in our region. And nowadays we need to change the issue, clarify and impose suitable penalties for spreading disinformation. This is the most important element of our activity nowadays. You probably know that this Russian spies were broadly dispersed in Poland. That's why we needed to react on this issue. Coming back to our companies in the region, we are prepared for embargo. For example, in case of an embargo on all refineries in region are ready to be supplied by ports or by oil pipelines. For example, in Poland we have NATO port We have also pipelines, oil pipelines in Czech and in Slovakia and Hungary, for example, Adria. So we are prepared to do it. Also, we reduce dependency, and nowadays only 29% of oil demand is covered by Russian oil. This is an example of the biggest company in Poland, Orlen. So the situation is good. For example, during last 2 years, Mozaic refinery. This is in Lithuania. This is a part of Orlen company. Reduced supply from 76% to 66%, and also this refinery can be fueled by port in Butenga, and in Butenga the capacity of Butenga is 13 million tons. So it's much more than Mozaic is. That Mozaic can need to the production. And coming back to summer presentation, I think that of course we need infrastructure. It's obvious, oil, gas infrastructure, etc. This is important element. But of course, we need also renewable energy, and the problem is that thanks to Germany, whole Europe has problems with gas, because gas is a transitional fuel, and unfortunately this is gas from Russia. So I think that we should looking for new solutions in technological progress, and this is the most important thing, because I'm not keen on importing oil from Russia or from Saudi Arabia or gas from Russia. No, I think that we should develop renewable energy in Europe, and of course. I think that thanks that our alliance in NATO, United States and Canada, we can manage without other countries, and it will make stability in the region, and this is the most important thing, because from the perspective, economic perspective, we have problem with inflation. In all countries in Europe. So the moment of aggression of Russia in Ukraine is very good. It's very good from economic perspective. This is the best moment to apply. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Krzysztof. And I see Margarita willing to comment. So,
okay, just a very quick comment. I cannot agree more with both of you, Krzysztof and Camilla, about the need to restrict, reduce, and even veto, especially Russian oil. I think there are resources in the world to work with other countries to produce more oil to replace as much as possible of Russian oil delivered to Europe. The two countries, I mean, energy dependence is such a big factor in reactions to different countries to this war and what they're willing or not willing to do. The two countries, NATO members that refuse to supply lethal weapons, are the two most dependent on Russian energy, oil, gas, and nuclear, the three of them, Hungary and Bulgaria. Surprise, right? No surprise here. Energy dependence is a subversion tool that Russia is using in order to introduce and change policies in different countries. The other thing I wanted to say in regards to Krzysztof's statement, we have Putin now, we might not have Putin tomorrow, but we had Eltsin before, and his policies were as imperialistic as Putin's are today, because he was the one destroying completely Grozny back in '94. So we have a succession of Russian governments with imperial agenda. Russia needs de-imperialization. Unless this happens, we're going to have a dangerous Russia, regardless of whether Putin is heading that country or not. If the population is 70%, 80% supportive of his attack on Ukraine, that means the imperial sentiment is very, very deep, not only among the leadership, but also among the population. How do you destroy that? Predictions of scholars that I work with are that Russia would start fracturing for various reasons. The war is just the last factor that is going to play a role in that. But the more that the pressure is on the regions, the more they are going to want to keep their resources and not share them with Moscow anymore. The other thing we need to be prepared of is the disaster in the Russian energy sector. We saw the disaster in the military sector. They're pulling out tanks of storage, and they all stolen precious materials, I mean elements and metals and optics and everything. That corruption is not limited to one industry only. The energy sector is full of corruption more than any other. So what is going to happen with the Russian infrastructure once we have the effect of permafrost thawing in Siberia? We need to get less dependent on Russian energy, regardless of the war anyway, because of those dangers that are posed to supply. If Russia is not able to address those problems, we are going to have shortages in Europe anyway. So this is what I wanted to say. Yes, shale gas in Europe and shale oil in Europe production is not high, but I will have to say it was a result of Russian subversion again, that it stopped in Ukraine and in Bulgaria and in Romania, because there was Chevron doing exploration work in those three countries, and they had to close down operations eventually. One reason was the Russian influence, especially in Bulgaria. The other reason was the war in Donbass that started in 2014. But the third reason, and it's important to have in mind, the rock is much harder in Europe than it is here in the United States, a lot more difficult to extract shale oil and gas. It will take a lot more investment to do that. It's not impossible, but it will take more investment, and we need to be ready to make those investments. Thank you.
Thank you, Margarita. Let me also add that in case of Poland, it was a situation where American companies were welcomed in the shale gas industry, and they decided to leave, and in Russia there was a better opportunity then. So of course I saw some you willing to comment, so please, the screen is yours. Just
it's on?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not here to defend Russia or Mr. Putin, of course. There is no way to try to find them any justification. But I need to insist, there is no morale in geopolitics. Geopolitics is above the morale. If you try to introduce the morale in this, you lose the point. Because it's very simple. if we want to be moral, we should stop since the 24th of February to import gas from Russia. Nobody has stopped to import gas from Russia. Why? Because morale is not important. So if we continue to play with morale and we do not apply it, it doesn't make sense. So clearly, the member states of the EU are not interested in morale. Otherwise, they would have stopped to import energy immediately from day one. Second thing, in 1973, we were at war with the Middle East. We were at war with the Middle East because they stopped completely the supply of oil and gas. Well, oil, sorry, not gas. Did we stop to have a relation with them? Of course not. Of course not. So I'm sure that one day, I don't know when, I don't know the compromise, but we will continue to have relationship with Russia. It's just impossible to say that Russia forever is out of the nations. No way, that's not true. And because Russia owns 15% of the world energy, they will remain in the business because there is no morale in the energy. Do you think that Chinese will stop to buy oil from Russia? Do you think that Japan will stop to buy Sakhalin gas? Never. They will continue to buy. And if we stop to buy oil and gas from Russia, those countries might buy more and sell it, saying that it's not Russian. So I think that it's important to put complete perspective and not just what we would like to do. And my last point is that we have a problem with gas in Europe because gas is used for heating houses. 70% of the gas that we use in Europe is for heating, not for electricity. For electricity, we can use nuclear, lignite, coal from Poland, from Silesian mine, no problem. But how do we heat the house next winter? How German will heat the house next winter? They will buy Russian gas, for sure. There is no other solution.
Yes, and I see you, Daniel, and this is where my question, because let's change the narration also, and if we don't want to talk about morale, okay, I might agree on that, I call it also the moral obligation, but let's talk about hard security issues. So let's just talk about pure, political realism, where we are just right now in a situation where we are dealing with the most threatening state within the international system. And the question is, well, maybe not do enough, but what more shall we do to simply answer back and reduce this military might of Russia? And please, Daniel, I see you want to comment, but these questions the question regarding, of course, hard security issues and what else can we do, I would also like to ask you.
Sure, not that I have answers, but so I want to say something about the 1973 embargo. It was a failure. How do we know that? It was never repeated. If it had been successful, they would have done it over and over again, but it was a failure. What about those long lines of cars? That was a separate issue having to do with price controls and the economics in the United States at the time. I contend that the 1973 embargo was a failure, and you see it because it was never repeated. Number two, I want to be careful about whether we have morality in or out. There's all sorts of morality, including the requirement of governments to protect their citizens. It is not to be sneered at when a government takes actions that they believe will protect their citizens from harm. And so if Hungary thinks that, or Bulgaria thinks that they are doing the right thing to protect their people from harm. I'm going to give them some points for that, even though I don't like what they're doing. But not everybody's morality is my morality. That's a problem. What should we do? My touchstone on what we should do always starts with what I learned that Kissinger used to start the meetings with. Why are we here? What are our goals? What are we trying to accomplish? So in the early Cold War, we wanted to hold off the dangers of a Soviet Union. And what we settled on as a policy was containment. It wasn't necessarily confrontation. We took this longer view of containment, which was in some ways risky, but it worked out. I don't know quite what we want to accomplish now. Do we want to create a peaceful Russia, or is that a contradiction? Do we want to, right? So the question really is, what do we want to accomplish? And then we can talk about means for accomplishing it.
Thank you. And Arnold, am I right that you'd like to comment?
Yeah,
please.
Just I'm not sure what we can do to change Russian behavior. I think we may have to go, like Dan mentioned, go back to a sort of a containment policy, 21st century version. But I think just getting back to one of your earlier questions, what do we have to do? I think one thing is to start investing in production and infrastructure. And it's going to be very difficult with the current political climate because, at least in this country and other countries, any investment in fossil fuels is looked down upon, to put it mildly. So there has to be a change in attitude at the political levels to allow this to continue. And I think, because why would a private sector company, why would any company put the risk into exploration and so on when there's not the political support to do so? So I think maybe we're starting to see some changes now over the last month that maybe this is we need to start investing more, looking more seriously at investment. But even in this country, in the United States, there's still a lot of political opposition to fossil fuels, and that's going to continue until I think serious people get in power and start to look at all the options that we have for resource, for resource diversity. And looking at, again, I talked about nuclear. I know Samuel's talked about nuclear. We all look at nuclear as one of the key elements to this, but also fracking and looking at the new technologies that are out there. So I think I saw David with his hand up, so I'll be quiet and let David continue.
Yes. As regards energy diversification for a country such as Germany, given this now many years long dependency on Russian hydrocarbons, it seems to me that the German government is moving as rapidly as I believe it believes it can go. That is to say, the German economics minister was in both Qatar and the UAE last week. In Qatar, he signed long-term contracts for Qatari liquefied natural gas. In the UAE, he was certainly at the time negotiating, I'm not sure if contracts were signed, negotiating further cooperation as regards energy security as well. And in a long interview which he gave in Austrian, or which appeared in Austrian radio last week, he was saying that existing contracts between German purchasers and Russian suppliers have in recent days been modified already so as to reduce German imports of coal as a percentage, German imports of coal, oil, and natural gas. I mention all of this in part to address the question that Dan and Samuel raised a moment ago concerning morality in geopolitics. Any government, such as the government of Chancellor Olaf Scholz, is faced with the conundrum of trying to do what I believe it now believes is the morally right thing, and at the same time, keep lights on in German homes, keep German homes heated, and so on. I think in the case of Germany specifically, there has been more progress made since the 27th of February, when Chancellor Scholz gave his now famous speech, towards reducing this dependency on Russian importations of hydrocarbons than has been made, certainly, in the last 20 years. I think the dramatic nature of that alteration should not be ignored, even though the debate continues to rage in Germany over whether or not an actual import embargo could be put in place, and that whether or not the German economy could absorb such a shock. So I'll stop there. I just wanted to sort of add that comment. Thank you.
A quick question, if I may, Camilla. I know that one of the mistakes that the EU made over the last few years was encouraging spot market reliance, not long-term contracts. Is that now gone? I know that Germany has signed long-term contracts. Has the policy changed, or are they just ignoring it?
I believe they just ignore it. They have not yet changed their mind. In Brussels, they have not yet changed their mind. They are still focused on decarbonization. And therefore, for them, it's not a problem. We will solve. They believe that it will be solved with hydrogen stories. So really, they are far away from the reality and what we are discussing today. That's very surprising. Do you imagine that the Commission has published last week an order that by the winter, 80% of the gas stock should be filled. But they have not said where to buy the gas. They oblige member states to fill their stocks, but where to buy? There is no solution. Are we going to say to Qatar, please don't send any more gas to Japan? Mr. Biden said that we will sell gas to the EU. He can give order to develop more LNG terminal, but he's not the owner of the methane carrier. Methane carrier do not obey to Mr. Biden. They go where the market wants. This is why I'm saying that we are in real trouble, because we cannot solve the solution for the next winter.
No, but we will have localized markets. Japan will be separate from Europe, I believe. The globalization we saw, the smoothness of the supply chains is about to be disrupted. And Europe will pay more than North America, and Asia will pay more than Europe.
Of course, you're right. Yeah. Because we have no other solution.
And for the economists among us and the optimizers among us, this is a tragedy, but oh well. Right? It's a retrogression to before World War II, when there were in fact localized markets.
Because the market is not perfect, because we are lacking infrastructure. If we had infrastructure, then the market will be flexible. But we are lacking infrastructure, and by infrastructure I mean LNG terminal in Europe, but mainly methane carrier. We are lacking methane carrier. Gas is abundant, but how to transport it?
So I think that we do lack infrastructure, but the real problem is a malevolent Russia.
A what?
Malevolent. So it's a bad actor, malaprop.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, please, Krzysztof, I call it simply a trap, because we are in a so terrible trap right now, trying to wage between what we should do in political terms and, as I said, just to deter or stop the most threatening state within the international system, because, of course, everything goes far beyond just the energy issues. But Krzysztof, I saw you willing to comment, so please, and just unmute yourself, okay?
Thank you very much. So only a short remark. Poland is ready to to stop import Russian gas this year. So we finished Baltic Pipe, and we have LNG terminal. So from this perspective, Poland is a good example of proper policy, energy policy. Of course, the problem of price. This is something different, and we have to manage. But we have to manage in national level and of course in European level. And I think that this is the additional issue. So the first step, this is of course infrastructure, and second economic problems connected with technology and transfer of oil and gas.
Thank you, Krzysztof. Because we still have five minutes according to our schedule, just one element that I consider is missing here is the energy transition. As also possible, and we are of course talking right now about short-term solutions. So we must search for the alternative supplies of natural gas, of oil. There's no discussion. This is clear. However, if we take a look at the both International Energy Agency plan, this 10-point plan for the world in terms of reducing oil dependency on Russia, but generally consumption of oil, but also 10-point plan for Europe regarding how to lower dependence on Russian gas. Plus, if we take a look at the European Commission Repower EU plan, we see that this role that renewable energy, alternative fuels, of course, nuclear energy, of course, also technological progress in all possible fields that the business can imagine right now. So starting with, for example, thermal isolation of buildings and so on, are to play a role in this whole process. And maybe, David, if I could ask you about this role of energy transition in the whole process of decreasing import dependence on Russia, this over-reliance, obviously. What is your perspective, because you're specializing in Germany?
Yes, in a centerpiece of a centerpiece of Chancellor Scholz's speech on the 27th of February had to do precisely with continuing Germany's energy transition. As all of our panelists here know, Germany had been talking about phasing out coal and so on by 2038, or perhaps as early as 2035. In light of the current situation, I don't think that will happen that soon, but he continued to emphasize, and indeed emphasized in his speech last Wednesday to the Bundestag, that one of the most important means by which Germany, as a single member of NATO and the European Union, could reduce its reliance on Russian hydrocarbons would be to continue to try to force the energy transition to a green economy, even in the face of the short-term crisis arising from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I don't think the German government will by any means abandon these very ambitious goals that it has set for itself, especially with the election of the new government in September of 2021. He was quite emphatic about that, and I would certainly assume, on the basis of everything that I know about this current coalition government, that will not change.
So I will ask you, see Samuel, Daniel, and I will ask you for this also referring maybe 1 2 sentences to what I said. If you share this view that perhaps energy transition is the only option for the European members of NATO. So Samuel, please. And just unmute yourself. Just unmute. No, not yet. Oh, yeah.
We didn't invent energy transition because of Ukraine war or climate change. Energy transition has been invented back 49 years ago. At that time, 49 years ago, we said we need to change everything. And what we have done is continue to increase the demand of energy. I can speak openly because I was in charge of the directive promoting renewable energy. I drafted the directive. And I was in charge of the directive on cogeneration to reduce the energy consumption. And I was in charge of the directive on energy performance building to reduce the energy consumption in buildings. We know all that. We know all that. It takes tens and tens of years. So discussing about energy transition is just not serious. We are here to find a solution for the next winter in Germany, not in Poland, because Poland has been clever. Poland has diversified its gas supply with Qatar, with Cheniere, and now preparing to import gas from Klaipeda terminal or the gas pipe coming from Denmark. Fair enough. But Germany, the leader of the EU, and Italy also, we have not to forget Italy, have been blind to this situation, just blind. It's why we have a problem. We can discuss about Hungary and Bulgaria, but this is nothing. The issue is what will happen in Germany. And until the moment they will not say we were stupid, they will not change. And that's the problem. Germany cannot say we have been blind, and they continue to speak, but they have no solution. Gas from Qatar will not be in Germany next winter. Never. Never.
Thank you. And Daniel, please. Just unmute. Unmute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so transition, of course. In history, we're always transitioning, and I believe in technology. I just don't know what we're going to transition to. And I don't mind Germany having very aggressive goals, but it's got to be thought through well. So a friend of ours, Brenda Schaefer, says, when you plan transitions badly, you know what you get? You get more coal. Right? We're going to do more coal now because some people say, well, just do something. No, if you do the wrong thing, it works out worse than you started with. So I don't mind transitioning. I don't know to what. I'm sure that technology will intrude regularly and make life better and better. But you got to do it with some foresight and some planning. Look, I'm the old curmudgeon who just says you got to plan. Yeah, you got to plan, right? And Germany made a big step, Samuel, by making that Volta-Fass that says we'll put money into the armed forces and we're not going to buy Russian gas. Those were big steps. I never expected them to be quite so quick and so certain. I give them credit for that. They don't have to do a Chinese kind of confession to their children. Anyway.
Thank you. And maybe 1 2 sentences, comments, last sentences, Arnold, Margarita, and Krzysztof. So this order.
Just the last sentence is just to reinforce what's been said, is investment in infrastructure, investment in production, and we need to ensure the private sector has the freedom to do this. That's my final thought.
Thank you so much. And final thought from Margarita.
I just wanted to add to talking about reducing dependence on Russian gas. Even China, during its last Congress of the Communist People's Party, decided that they need to invest more in developing their own oil and gas resources. And that kind of poses a question. Is it a shift in attitudes as a result of the war? We see in Asia as well, because of the more of a localized market that we're going to see and a lot more higher prices in Asia, that China is taking such steps. Well, bottom line is this war is having a global impact, regardless that it's only in one country in Europe, but it's going to affect the lives of everyone and the prices of energy are everywhere in the world.
Thank you. And Krzysztof, thank you. You need to unmute.
He's locked. Oh.
Okay. So, solidarity, cooperation in NATO, and technology.
Yeah.
3 points. Important.
Excellent.
And there is no bad technology.
And I would definitely agree. This is about investing in as many technological options as possible and making use of those technologies that we already using, and of course investing in all the options. And yes, let's give. Considering that we are simply very different in our initial energy situation, let's give countries also a chance to elaborate what are the best solutions, because on one hand, it is absolutely about a political choice, and we all know what should be done, what must be done, and now the question is how to do it. So thank you so much for this incredibly fruitful and inspiring discussion, and for this participation in the seminar. Thank you so much. Maybe just my last thought. I had the privilege to participate in this meeting with President Biden when he gave a speech, and he also well, he was also saying about this need to get us out from this trap we're obviously in, I mean Europe, and he also suggested one of the solutions will be renewable energy, so the transition too, of course, as a long-term solution. But we do remember we have more options, and thank you. Good night. I don't know. Here is good night.
Thank you, Kamila. Thank you, Krzysztof, for hosting this panel tonight, and thank you to all the Polish people for the incredible task that you have taken on doing, hosting so many refugees, what, 1.5 million or over 1.5 million already, with children and women and dogs that are homeless from Ukraine. Thank you for everything you do.
Here.
And Samuel, I wish you bon vacances.
Thank you.
Which reminds us all that in the midst of these very important discussions, it's still important to take some time to enjoy yourself and to live your life if you can.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.